Dad, enjoy the view. You've earned it. Those were the last words my son said before he unlatched the helicopter door 5,000 feet above the Grand Canyon. The wind roared like a living thing, tearing at my shirt, my breath, my sanity. The harness clicked loose, and for one suspended heartbeat, I looked into my son's eyes, the same blue eyes that used to stare up at me from a crib, and realized he was about to kill me. If you think betrayal only comes from enemies, you've never watched your own blood smile while gravity waits below. My name is Calvin Drake, 71 years old. I'm a retired aerospace engineer, a man who spent 50 years designing machines meant to defy gravity. Ironically, the first time gravity nearly claimed me, it wasn't physics, it was family. 2 weeks before that flight, I was sitting in my Scottsdale home, a desert palace of glass and stone, sipping single malt on the terrace. Sunset painted the red cliffs outside my window gold. It should have felt like peace. But peace is hard to feel when the people you love look at you like a prize instead of a person. My son Nathan strode into the room like he owned it. In some ways, he already did or thought he did. Custom Italian suit Patek Philippe, gleaming the restless energy of someone addicted to being seen. Dad, he said, dropping a thick folder on the coffee table. We need to talk about the patents. The patents, I repeated, setting down my glass. The company needs full control. Investors are nervous about your shares still being active. If you sign this, I can merge everything under my leadership. It's just a formality. A formality. That word has built empires and buried legacies. I opened the folder. My signature on those pages would hand over Drake Aerodynamics, the company I'd built, from one rented hangar in Tucson, to my son permanently. Do you even know what those designs mean? Nathan, I asked quietly. Those equations kept aircraft stable at 30,000 feet. They also kept our family fed for 40 years. Nathan laughed, short, sharp, expensive. Dad, this isn't about math anymore. It's about image control. You can't run a brand like this from a rocking chair. I studied him, the Rolex, the smooth skin, the impatience, and saw every mistake I'd made condensed into one man. The endless tuition checks, the trust fund, the blind belief that money could fill the space his mother's death left behind. You think success is loud, I said. But the men who really build things, they do it quietly. His jaw tightened. Maybe your time's up. That sentence didn't just bruise me, it broke something I didn't know was still fragile. I stood steady despite the tremor in my hands. My time's not up, Nathan. But your respect might be. He exhaled hard, pacing toward the window. Then he turned all charm again. Let's not fight, Dad. How about we start fresh? This weekend, just you and me. Helicopter ride over the canyon, private pilot. My treat. I wanted to believe him. God help me, I did. Because that's what fathers do, they believe even when experience tells them not to. That night, I found myself in my study looking at Evelyn's photograph, my late wife. She died 15 years ago, cancer, the kind that burns slow and cruel. She'd always said greed flies faster than any machine you'll ever build. I ran my thumb over the frame, the glass cold against my skin. On the bookshelf beside her photo sat a small, worn Bible she'd kept by her hospital bed. I opened it without thinking. Inside the cover in her handwriting were 5 words: "If faith fails, build wings." I closed it gently and whispered, "If God still listens, give me clarity." not comfort. Outside, the desert wind rattled the windows like distant applause. I had no idea that 2 weeks later I'd be hanging off a helicopter door, staring at my son through the same air we once breathed together, wondering if faith could still hold when family had fallen. Before we go any further, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from today? The day before the flight, my son came by again, this time without the folder, without the edge. Just Nathan wearing that boyish grin he used to have when he'd win spelling bees or show me half-finished model rockets. "Dad," he said, "I booked us a sunset tour. Just the two of us. No business talk. No lawyers. I want to make things right." If he'd said those words 20 years earlier, I would have believed every syllable. But now every apology sounded like a sales pitch. Still, there was something about the way he said "just us" that hit me square in the chest. "All right, son," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "One more flight for old time's sake." The next morning, the Arizona sky was a flawless blue, the kind pilots dream about. Nathan arrived at my house in a brand new Range Rover matte black with the dealership tags still on. He honked twice, impatient like a man late to his own miracle. "You sure you're up for it?" he asked as I stepped out. "I've been up higher in worse weather," I said, locking the door behind me. The ride to the helipad took an hour. The city faded to desert, then to sheer silence broken only by the tires crushing gravel. Nathan talked the whole way about investors' new branding, a potential IPO. He sounded like a man trying to convince the world he was in control of it. I mostly listened. When he paused to check his phone, I looked out the window and thought about all the flights I'd taken, test flights in experimental jets, where a wrong calculation meant death. Back then, fear had been clean, predictable. You respected it, and it respected you. But this was different. At the helipad, a sleek Bell 429 helicopter gleamed under the noon sun. The pilot, a young man with mirrored sunglasses, greeted us with a crisp nod. "Afternoon, gentlemen. Name's Chase. We'll be taking off in 10. Nathan clapped him on the shoulder like an old friend. That detail didn't register then, but later it would haunt me. We lifted off smoothly, rotors thumping above like a steady heartbeat. Below us, the desert unfolded into ribbons of red and gold shadows, carving poetry into the cliffs. "You remember when Mom used to bring us to Sedona?" I asked, my voice lost beneath the hum of the blades. Nathan smiled faintly. "Yeah. You'd take pictures of the rock formations. I'd complain about the heat. For a few minutes, it almost felt like peace." He pointed out a herd of wild horses, the Colorado River gleaming like a silver vein. "This is what life should be, Dad," he said, almost wistful. "Freedom. Freedom doesn't mean forgetting where you came from," I said softly. He didn't answer. Half an hour in, the pilot's voice crackled through the headset. "Approaching the North Ridge, sir. Winds are mild. Perfect time to hover for photos." Nathan's eyes lit up. "Let's do it." He pulled out a GoPro, strapping it to the dashboard, narrating like a vlogger, Drake aerodynamics over the Grand Canyon, the view of a lifetime. I chuckled. "You really think anyone wants to watch two men my age talk about cliffs?" He grinned. "They'll watch because it's legacy, Dad. Yours and mine." Then something in his tone shifted. "Legacy." He said it like a transaction, not a blessing. The helicopter steadied over the ridge. I could see forever the endless layers of red earth, the sunlight slicing through clouds like divine geometry. I thought of Evelyn again, her hands folded over his hospital blanket, whispering, "You'll fly again, Cal. Just don't forget to land." For the first time in years, I prayed not the kind you do in church, but the kind you do when your heart knows something your brain refuses to admit. "If faith still listens," I murmured under my breath, "help me see the truth before it arrives." The headset crackled again. "Everything good back there, Mr. Drake?" Nathan turned, his face half lit by sun, half swallowed by shadow. "Perfect," he said. But his smile didn't reach his eyes. We banked west toward the deeper canyon. The air grew rougher, thinner. The pilot adjusted altitude, muttering something about turbulence. Nathan's hand brushed the safety latch beside his seat, casual, careless, practiced. I didn't notice. I was too busy looking out the window, marveling at the same sky I once conquered, with blueprints and numbers. Maybe that's the thing about faith, it doesn't warn you before the fall. I just remember thinking, what a beautiful day to trust someone you love. The canyon below us looked like another world, a cathedral carved by time and fire. The afternoon sun bled across the cliffs, staining everything crimson. Nathan leaned forward, tapping the pilot's shoulder. "Can we go lower? Dad's got to see this properly." Chase glanced back. "Copy that." Dropping altitude to 3,000. The helicopter tilted, dipping into the gorge. My stomach floated. The horizon vanished, replaced by walls of red stone and shadow. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Nathan said. He wasn't looking outside, he was looking at me. I smiled faintly, not seeing the danger yet. "I spent a lifetime chasing skies like this," I said. "Never thought my son would take me higher." "Higher," he repeated softly, the word curdling in his mouth. Then his tone sharpened. "Tell me something, Dad. Did you ever think about what happens to me when you're gone?" "What kind of question is that?" "The kind that keeps me up at night," he said, voice tight through the headset. "You built an empire, but you never built an exit plan. Everything's in your name, your patents, your trademarks, even the damn house." My pulse quickened. "It's not greed, Nathan. It's stewardship." "I was planning to planning," he snapped, cutting me off. "You've been planning for 10 years. I'm the one keeping the company running, making deals, handling the pressure. You just sit there collecting dividends and sermons." I stared at him, the headset buzzing faintly in the silence. I didn't realize gratitude expired. He laughed, bitter brittle. "Gratitude doesn't pay debt collectors, Dad." The pilot said something in Swahili, no, in static, it didn't matter. Because at that moment Nathan reached down. His hand found the latch beside his seat. A sharp, metallic click sliced through the hum of the rotors. "Nathan," I said quietly, watching the door release an inch. "What are you doing?" He turned, eyes cold and deliberate. "Ending the delay." "What delay?" "The one between inheritance and reality." Then, without another word, he shoved. The door flew open, and the world turned into chaos. Wind howled through the cabin, slamming against my chest. Papers exploded into the air like frantic birds. The helicopter jerked sideways as I grabbed the frame with both hands, my harness suddenly loose. "Nathan!" I shouted over the roar. "You don't have to do this." He didn't answer. He just stared, expression frozen, mouth set in a line I'd never seen before. A stranger wearing my son's face. I tried to pull the door shut, but Chase the pilot yelled, "Sir, sit down." His hands weren't even on the controls. He was watching Nathan. He was part of it. My brain snapped into survival mode, the same instinct that kept me alive when an engine caught fire during a test flight back in '79. I shifted my weight, anchoring one boot against the seat base, fingers white around the steel frame. The canyon wind tore at my arms, my shirt, my breath. Nathan leaned close, shouting, "It's nothing personal, Dad. You always said life's about risk." He slammed his hand against my shoulder hard, and I lost my grip. I fell. For the first 2 seconds, there was no sound, just weightlessness, the same sensation I dedicated my life to studying. Then the rush of air screamed around me. I saw the helicopter above, a black silhouette against the white sun, shrinking, spinning, leaving me behind. Instinct took over. I twisted my body, spread my arms, flattened my fall, searching for anything below. The canyon's ledges blurred past, rock dust, sky blood in my ears. Then impact, a violent crack of ribs, the taste of iron. I hit a narrow outcropping, rolled, stopped. Pain lit up every nerve, but I was alive. Barely. Above, the helicopter circled once, then banked away. No radio call, no rescue flare, just silence. Dust filled my mouth. The sun burned my face. I tried to sit up, groaning as pain screamed from my left side. My harness dangled uselessly, one strap torn clean through. Somewhere in the distance, an eagle cried, the sound haunting, ancient, almost mocking. I looked down at the canyon stretching for miles and realized the truth: Nathan hadn't lost control. He'd planned every second. My hands were shaking as I unbuckled the broken harness and reached for the pocket on my jacket. Inside, my smartwatch, cracked but still functional. Evelyn had given it to me years ago, engraved on the back, "Always come home." I pressed the SOS beacon. The red light blinked weakly. Battery 15%. Signal uncertain. My breath came ragged, shallow. I tore a sleeve from my shirt, wrapped it around my ribs, and forced myself to look up at the sky. A shadow passed across the sun, a hawk gliding effortlessly on thermal currents. I whispered, "You win, Nathan. For now." Then I added softly, "But gravity still answers to me." I crawled toward the canyon wall, searching for a crevice, shade, anything that meant another hour of life. Blood soaked my handprints in the sand. The desert swallowed my voice, but I kept talking to Evelyn, to God, to whoever might still be listening. "Not like this," I muttered. "Not yet." The sun dipped lower. The rocks glowed like embers, and somewhere above, the sound of rotors faded into nothing, carrying my son and the betrayal that nearly became my grave. I don't remember blacking out. Only the taste of dust in my mouth, the steady pulse of pain in my ribs, and the sun slipping away like a dying ember. When I came to the world had gone blue, that strange twilight, where the desert holds its breath between life and death. Somewhere in the distance, coyotes cried, and the echo bounced off the canyon walls like ghosts whispering my name. My watch was still blinking, SOS signal weak, but alive. The battery read 4%. That little red light was the only heartbeat I could count on. I pressed it once more, whispering through cracked lips, "Come on. Don't let me be the last voice in this canyon." Hours passed. I don't know how many. I drifted in and out, half-conscious, dreaming of Evelyn, her soft voice reading to me on our porch, her laughter echoing through our first home. In the dream, she said, "You've built machines that touch the sky, Now you need to build a reason to stay on the ground. When I opened my eyes again, I saw light, not the sun, but beams cutting through darkness. A helicopter, a rescue chopper. The voice on the loudspeaker was distorted by the wind. "Sir, we see you, hold still." I tried to wave, but my arm wouldn't move. All I could do was smile. They lowered a harness. Two men descended, silhouettes against the stars, voices urgent but calm. "Hang in there, old man," one said, wrapping the straps around me. "We've got you." When I woke again, I was in a hospital bed in Flagstaff. My body wrapped in gauze and the smell of antiseptic. A nurse was checking my vitals. Her badge read A. Moreno. "You're one lucky man," she said, half smiling. "Your emergency beacon pinged the ranger station about 15 minutes before the battery died." 15 minutes, I murmured. Story of my life. She frowned gently. "You're strong." "You'll heal." "Strong," I repeated, "or just too stubborn to quit." She handed me a small plastic bag. Inside was my cracked watch, my wallet, and a folded photograph Evelyn and Nathan on the beach years ago. I stared at it for a long time, then closed my eyes. "Did they find my son?" I asked quietly. "Not yet, Mr. Drake. The FAA has him listed as safely landed at Henderson Airfield. He reported an equipment malfunction. Equipment malfunction." The words burned through me like acid. I nodded slowly. Of course he did. 2 days later, my old attorney Walter Hodge arrived, silver hair, gray suit, the kind of man who carried both scripture and subpoena papers in the same briefcase. He stopped at the foot of my bed and said, "You look better than the rumors." "I was told I fell," I said. "That's one way to describe betrayal." He raised an eyebrow. "You want to press charges?" "Not yet," I said. "First, I want to change something else." I reached for the bedside table where my laptop waited. "Walter, I'm done leaving this company or my fortune in hands that see it as currency instead of responsibility." He nodded, taking out his notepad. "What are you thinking? I want every patent, every asset, every share transferred into the Evelyn Drake Foundation, effective immediately." Walter blinked. "That's over $40 million, Cal." "I know. I want it to fund aerospace scholarships, kids who dream of flight, but can't afford to chase it. My son had every chance, and he traded them for greed. Let someone else rise higher." He wrote quickly, his pen scratching against the paper like a quiet confession. "Are you sure?" he asked, finally. I looked toward the hospital window where dawn was breaking over the red horizon. The sky blushed gold, the same color as Evelyn's wedding ring. "For the first time in a long time," I said, "I'm certain." Walter hesitated, then asked softly, "Do you still believe in God after what happened?" I smiled faintly. "I don't think faith is about believing in what you can't see. It's about acting on what you know is right even when it hurts." He nodded. "Then we'll file it today." As he left, I touched the photograph again. Evelyn's smile seemed to glow in the early light. "If faith still listens," I whispered, "thank you for getting me out. Now show me what to do with the time you've loaned me. If you're still here following my story this far, type 1 in the comments." Sometimes survival isn't about strength. It's about what you choose to do once you've been spared. By then, Nathan's version of the story had already spread across every business outlet in Arizona. Drake Aerodynamics founder dies in tragic helicopter accident. That was the headline. My death neat, tragic, profitable. I lay in the hospital bed, still in my arm, watching a news anchor recite the script my son had probably written himself. Nathan's face filled the screen, perfect suit, rehearsed grief, a tear balanced on command. My father was a visionary, he said solemnly. We'll honor his legacy by continuing the Drake mission. He even paused dramatically before adding, he died doing what he loved, flying. I nearly laughed. It came out as a wince of pain instead. The next morning, Walter walked into my room with a small, satisfied smile and a folder thick enough to crush lies. It's done, he said, setting it on the table. The Evelyn Drake Foundation is official. Assets transferred, notarized. You're no longer the majority shareholder of anything, at least not on paper. I nodded slowly. Good. That means he can't sell what he tried to kill me for. Walter adjusted his glasses. You want to tell the world you're alive? I looked at my hands, still bandaged, the veins blue against thin skin. Not yet. Let him feel safe. Let him start celebrating. 3 days later, I checked out of the hospital and took the back exit. No press, no statements. Just a plain rental car and a hat pulled low. Scottsdale shimmered in desert heat as I drove home, my home, or what used to be. The gate recognized my old code, and for a moment I thought maybe Nathan hadn't changed it. But when I pulled up the long driveway, there were 2 security guards standing at the door, men I didn't know. Afternoon 1 said, Private residence. I'm aware, I replied, stepping closer. Whose name's on the deed? He checked his tablet. Property of Drake Holdings, LLC. I smiled tightly. That's still me. He frowned. Mr. Nathan Drake said the former owner passed away. I reached into my pocket and handed him my ID. Then I guess I'm the ghost you were warned about. Inside, everything reeked of new money and bad taste. Evelyn's piano was gone, replaced by an onyx bar. The walls, once filled with family photos, now hosted abstract art, loud, meaningless, expensive. Nathan had turned our home into a showroom. He was standing in the living room when I walked in mid-sentence on a Bluetooth call. He froze mid-word, phone still at his ear. Dad, I took off my hat. You sound surprised. His face drained of color. The phone slipped from his hand. How you were, I saw the footage. You saw what you wanted to see, I interrupted. You saw me disappear and thought it meant freedom. He took a step back, shaking his head. Dad, wait. You have no idea what happened that day. The latch failed. Stop. My voice cut through his excuses like a blade. I designed that latch myself in '82. It doesn't fail. It obeys physics. You just forgot the math. Nathan's jaw clenched. You can't prove anything. I pulled my cracked smartwatch from my pocket and set it on the table. The red SOS light blinked once. It recorded everything: audio, location, altitude. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. I stepped closer. Every word, Nathan. The argument, your confession, the push. And the pilot chase, he's on the FAA manifest. They're already investigating. He turned away, rubbing his temples. Dad, I panicked. I didn't mean you meant it enough to cash in, I said. To file insurance. To announce my death before they even found a body. I thought it was the only way to own what you didn't earn. He spun around, voice breaking. "You've never trusted me. Trust is built," I said quietly, "not inherited." Walter entered then, right on cue, flanked by two plainclothes officers. Nathan stared at him. "What's this?" Walter handed me a file. I slid it across the table toward my son. "It's an invitation," I said, "to the board meeting you scheduled for tomorrow, the one where you'll be announcing a new CEO. I'll be attending." "You can't." I interrupted, "and I will. Because you see, Nathan, the company you thought you inherited no longer exists. The patents, the accounts, the estate all belong to a foundation you can't touch." Walter added quietly, "And you'll need to explain a few inconsistencies to the FAA." Nathan looked between us, realization dawning like panic. "You set me up." "No," I said, walking past him toward the door. "You set yourself up. I just made sure the world could see it." That night I sat on the porch where Evelyn used to drink tea at sunset. The sky over the desert was blood orange, the air humming with cicadas. I felt no triumph, just a quiet, exhausted kind of peace. If faith means anything, I whispered, it's doing what must be done even when love protests. The desert answered in silence, but somehow I felt heard. By the next morning, the headlines had changed. Calvin Drake, alive, shocking twist in alleged helicopter accident. The photo was terrible, me stepping out of a police SUV, still wearing bandages and a scowl. But I didn't care. The truth was out. Reporters swarmed the courthouse, cameras flashing like gunfire. Walter walked beside me, calm and composed. "You don't have to do this publicly," he murmured. "You've already won." I shook my head. "No." He built the lie in daylight. That's where it needs to die. Nathan arrived 15 minutes later, escorted by 2 FAA agents and a sheriff's deputy. His once perfect hair was disheveled. The designer suit looked borrowed. When he saw me standing there, alive, unbroken, his mouth twitched like a wound reopening. "Dad." His voice cracked. "We can fix this. I'll admit everything. Just drop the charges." "You mean the charges for attempted murder?" I asked. "Or the fraud, the insurance claim, the forged signatures?" He winced, as if each word was a bullet. "You're my father. Please." I sighed, and that used to mean something. The courtroom was small, old, and too bright. I sat at the front, flanked by Walter and the district attorney. Nathan was across the aisle, head bowed, hands trembling slightly. The judge asked me to recount what happened. I did calmly, without drama. The facts were enough. I played the audio recording from my smartwatch, Nathan's voice echoing through the speakers. "It's nothing personal, Dad. You always said life's about risk. I just want to speed up my inheritance timeline." Gasps rippled through the room. Nathan looked down, eyes wet, jaw quivering. "I didn't mean it," he whispered. I was angry. I stared at him. "You were greedy. There's a difference." The prosecutor asked if I wished to make a statement before sentencing. I stood slowly, every bone in my body aching but upright. For 40 years, I built planes that flew higher than the storms that tried to stop them, I began. I thought that if I gave my son every advantage, he'd learn the same. But I taught him to reach for altitude, not attitude. I turned toward Nathan. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "I can forgive what you tried to do to me," I said. "But I can't forgive what you did to yourself. You killed your integrity before you ever touched that latch." The judge's gavel came down hard. Nathan Drake, you are sentenced to 25 years in federal prison for attempted homicide, insurance fraud, and falsifying aviation records. The words hit like thunder. Nathan slumped forward, sobbing. When the bailiff moved to escort him, he called out, "Dad, please, you're all I have left." I met his gaze, the same eyes I once kissed goodnight, the same eyes that watched me fall. "Oh, son," said quietly, "you had everything. You just wanted more." Outside the courthouse, reporters shouted questions I didn't answer. Walter guided me to the car, but before getting in, I paused. Across the street stood a small stone church, its doors open. "I'll meet you at the office," I told him. Inside, the air was cool and still. No cameras, no microphones, just the faint scent of old wood and candle wax. I sat in the last pew, the weight of everything pressing down at once. Evelyn's voice came back to me, soft and steady. "You can forgive without forgetting Cal." That's what faith really is, remembering the hurt, but choosing peace anyway. I folded my hands. For the first time since the fall, I wasn't praying for rescue. I was praying for release. If faith means anything, I whispered, let it teach me to live with mercy after justice. The stained glass caught the sunlight, then scattering color across the pews, red, gold, and blue. The same colors of the canyon that almost became my grave. I walked out feeling lighter, not because the past was gone, but because it had finally stopped pulling me down. That night I returned home to find the desert quiet again. The sky was clear, the stars sharp as diamonds. I poured one last glass of whiskey and raised it toward the heavens. To gravity, I said softly. To faith. To Evelyn. The wind moved through the saguaro cacti like applause, low and endless. For the first time in years, I felt what my wife used to call stillness without fear. 6 months later, I stood before a hangar that once smelled of jet fuel and ambition. Now it smelled of fresh paint and possibility. The letters across the front read, "The Evelyn Drake Aerospace Center." The sunlight hit the steel just right, warm, golden, almost forgiving. I had sold every remaining share of Drake Aerodynamics, every property that once defined success, and poured the entire fortune, $42 million, into this. A place not for power, but for potential. A group of teenagers gathered near the front doors, their faces wide with curiosity and hope. Most came from neighborhoods where even a bus ticket to the airport was a luxury. Now they'd be learning to build drones, study propulsion, and design flight systems. One boy couldn't have been older than 16, asked shyly. "Mr. Drake, sir, is it true you used to own an airplane company?" I smiled. "I still do," I said. "But this one doesn't make machines, it makes second chances." They laughed, and the sound filled the hangar, loud, alive, cleansing. Walter had warned me that the press would show up eventually. They did. A journalist from Phoenix Tribune approached, microphone ready. "Mr. Drake," she said, "the world knows your story. The betrayal, the trial. Why start a foundation instead of retiring quietly?" I paused, looking around the vast space where the walls echoed with new beginnings. "Because silence isn't healing," I said simply. "It's hiding. I've spent too many years watching greed build towers higher than decency. This center isn't about redemption for me, it's about giving the next generation something better to believe in." She nodded, lowering her mic. "Do you miss your son?" The question hung in the air like static. I looked out through the open hangar door where the desert stretched endlessly vast, beautiful, and empty. I miss the boy I raised, I said. But the man he became, that's between him and his own conscience now. Later that afternoon, the ribbon-cutting ceremony began. A small crowd of students, professors, and local officials gathered. I held the scissors in my hand, the same hands that once designed fighter jets, now trembling slightly from age. 50 years ago I learned that flight isn't about escaping gravity. It's about working with it. Faith works the same way. You don't erase what holds you down, you build something stronger to lift you up. I cut the ribbon. Applause erupted. Flashbulbs went off. But above all the noise, I heard Evelyn's voice in memory laughing softly. That's my stubborn engineer. After the ceremony, a little girl approached, maybe 11 years old, clutching a model airplane made from scrap metal and tape. She held it out shyly. I built this after reading about you, she said. My dad said dreams are for people with money. I wanted to prove him wrong. I took the small plane, carefully examining every crooked wing and taped seam. It was imperfect. Beautifully imperfect. What's your name? I asked. Lila? Lila, this might be the best aircraft I've ever seen, I said. Why? She asked, eyes wide. Because it flies in here first, I said, tapping my chest. That's where all great designs begin. She smiled the kind of smile that feels like sunrise. And in that moment I realized the truth. I hadn't lost a son. I'd simply been given a different kind of legacy. When the crowd dispersed, I stayed behind, walking through the hangar as the sun dipped low. The metal beams glowed amber, the hum of machinery blending with laughter from the courtyard. In the corner, a plaque caught the last light of day in loving memory of Evelyn Drake, who believed in flight, faith, and forgiveness. I traced the letters with my fingertips, feeling their weight. You were right, Eve, I whispered. Greed flies faster. But love flies longer. That evening I drove home alone through the desert. For once the silence didn't feel empty, it felt earned. The wind brushed against the car windows like an old friend, carrying whispers of both pain and peace. Somewhere out there beyond the sand and the stars, I hoped Nathan found his own reason to rise again. But whether he did or not, I'd already learned to fly without him. A year later, the hangar doors opened again, this time, not for ribbon or applause, but for flight. The first prototype, built entirely by students at the Evelyn Drake Aerospace Center, stood gleaming under the morning sun. They'd named it Evelyn 1. The paint was still fresh. The body, sleek and silver, shimmered like a promise. It wasn't the biggest plane I'd ever built, nor the fastest. But as I ran my hand along its curved fuselage, I realized it was the most important. Are you sure you want to be the one to fly? Her asked Professor Lang, the program director, hovering nearby with nervous excitement. You're 72, Calvin. I smiled, tightening the strap on my flight jacket. Lang, I designed my first plane when Kennedy was still alive. I've been ready for this flight since before you were born. Outside, the desert sky stretched endless and blue, the same sky that had once nearly killed me now, inviting me back like an old friend. Students gathered along the runway, holding their breath as I climbed into the cockpit. Lila, the girl with the scrap metal airplane, stood front and center, clutching a clipboard bigger than her. You got this, Mr. Drake, she shouted, her voice trembling with joy. I gave her a thumbs up, adjusted the headset, and felt my pulse steady. The engine whirred to life. Not the thunderous roar of a jet, this was cleaner, gentler, an electric hum that sounded like forgiveness itself. "Control check," I said into the mic. "Copy, Mr. Drake," Professor Lang answered from the control tower. "You're clear for takeoff. Godspeed, Godspeed." I hadn't heard that word in years. As the wheels left the ground, I felt the old magic return, the feeling of surrender and control intertwined. The desert fell away beneath me, the horizon blooming gold. Every scar, every loss, every courtroom, every betrayal shrank to a speck below the wings. Altitude 500 feet. Lang's voice came through the headset. "How does she feel?" "Like redemption," I replied. Laughter echoed through the radio. But I wasn't joking. The plane responded like it understood me, smooth, patient, alive. For years I'd chased altitude as a measure of success. Now it felt like grace. At 3,000 feet, I banked gently toward the Grand Canyon. The same canyon where Nathan had tried to kill me. From up here it looked almost peaceful, a masterpiece carved by time and consequence. I let the autopilot hold steady and looked down. The sunlight hit the red cliffs just right. And for a moment, I thought I saw Evelyn standing on the ridge below, wind in her hair, smiling up at me. "Do you see this, Eve?" I whispered. We made it back. The wind answered, soft, steady, eternal. The radio crackled again. "Mr. Drake, you okay up there?" I smiled. "Better than okay, Lang. For the first time in a long time, I'm exactly where I belong." I circled once above the canyon, then turned toward the sunset. The sky burned orange and violet, the same colors that filled Evelyn's old paintings, the ones she never sold, because she said art should stay where love began. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a small silver cross, hers, the one she'd held in the hospital. I'd carried it through war, through betrayal, through survival. Now I let it fall from my hand. It glinted once in the sunlight, before disappearing into the endless air. "If faith ever needed proof," I said softly, "it's that we still rise even after we fall." When the wheels touched down again, the students cheered. Lang wiped his eyes with the back of his sleeve. Lila ran forward, waving her arms. "You did it, Mr. Drake." I climbed out, legs shaking, heart full. "We did it," I corrected. "All of us." Behind me, the sun dipped below the horizon, painting everything in gold. The hangar doors closed slowly, the last rays catching the letters on the building. Evelyn Drake Aerospace Center, built to rise again. That night, sitting alone on my porch, I looked up at the same stars I'd once cursed. Somewhere up there, light was still traveling from the day Evelyn said goodbye. Maybe faith wasn't about finding heaven above the clouds. Maybe it was about learning to build it here piece by piece before you're gone. I raised my glass to the quiet sky. Here's to flight, Eve, to faith that keeps its promises. The wind carried the desert's answer, a soft rustle like applause, and for the first time in decades, I didn't feel the need to fly anymore. 3 years passed. The Evelyn Drake Aerospace Center had grown into a small miracle on desert soil. We'd trained over 1,000 students, built 2 working prototypes, and seen graduates hired by NASA, Boeing, and SpaceX. Some of them still wrote me letters, long, awkward, grateful letters signed "Your stubborn student." It made me smile every time. The world had changed since that fall from the sky, and so had I. I'd traded suits for flight jackets, meetings for mentoring sessions, and boardrooms for hangars filled with laughter. I'd stopped being a businessman the day I learned what business without conscience costs. Every morning I started my day the same way, black coffee sunrise over the desert, a notebook open beside me. I still wrote engineering formulas, old habits die hard, but lately they'd turned into prayers. Not the kind you send upward, expecting answers. The kind you write down quietly, knowing the act itself is enough. Lord, I wrote one morning, thank you for giving me a reason to keep breathing after betrayal, for letting me build again, for turning a fall into flight. I closed the notebook and stared out at the horizon. In the distance, the hangar doors gleamed gold in the early light. That's when Walter arrived, his silver sedan crunching over the gravel driveway. He got out, holding an envelope. The official kind, cream-colored, sealed with a correctional facility stamp. It's from him, Walter said. I didn't need to ask who. Nathan. My son. 3 years in prison changes a man. At least that's what people say. I turned the envelope over in my hand. The handwriting was neat, careful, the same way he used to write "Happy Birthday, Dad" on cards when he was 8. My chest tightened. Do you want me to leave you alone? Walter asked gently. I nodded. Yeah. He squeezed my shoulder and left. I sat on the porch for a long minute, the letter resting on my lap like a living thing. Then I opened it. Dad. If you're reading this, it means the anger's cooled enough for you to at least want to know I'm still breathing. They gave me 25 years, but time moves differently in here. Some days it feels like I've already lived them all. I don't have excuses anymore. What I did was beyond wrong. I wanted control, and I confused that with love. You were right, greed flies faster. I just never realized it also crashes harder. I saw the foundation you built, the center. I read about it in the papers they pass around here. I guess you kept your promise, you built something better. Maybe that's what Mom wanted all along. I can't ask for forgiveness because I don't deserve it. But if you ever fly again, look over the canyon for me. I left a part of myself there too. Nathan. I read it twice, then again. My hands trembled, not from anger this time, from exhaustion, from memory, from something I couldn't name. I set the letter down beside Evelyn's photo, which still sat on the porch table. She smiled back, frozen in time, like she already knew the ending. You'd tell me to forgive him, I whispered, and you'd be right. But forgiveness wasn't a door I could just open. It was a long runway, one I wasn't done building yet. That evening, I drove out to the canyon again, the same ridge where I'd fallen, the same horizon that had almost ended me. The air was cold, the wind sharp. I stood there a long time holding Nathan's letter. When the sun sank below the rim, the sky turned the same deep orange I'd seen from the helicopter window that day. I unfolded the letter one last time and let it go. The wind caught it, carried it upward higher and higher until it disappeared into the light. Maybe it would find him somehow. Maybe it already had. Back at the car, I glanced once more toward the horizon. There were no ghosts left, only gratitude. I whispered softly, "Thank you for giving me back the pieces I lost. Not the same ones, but enough to build something new." The desert answered with quiet wind, warm and forgiving. and I finally understood what Evelyn meant when she said love flies longer than greed. The sun hadn't risen yet. The desert was quiet, painted in soft gray before dawn. I sat on the same porch where I'd once read Nathan's letter, a mug of black coffee warming my hands. The world was still that sacred stillness before life begins again. At 74, I'd learned that peace doesn't arrive with trumpets. It comes quietly, like morning light slipping through a window you forgot to close. Inside the house, my flight jacket hung by the door, a few patches frayed the edges, sun-bleached. On the wall above it, a framed photo of Evelyn smiled down at me, beside a new photo, my students standing under the hangar's sign hands, raised toward the sky. The plaque beneath read, "Built by the man who learned to fall and chose to rise." At 6:12 a.m., the desert horizon began to glow gold. I got up slowly, feeling every year in my knees, and stepped outside. A light wind carried the scent of sagebrush, and the faint hum of distant engines from the center. Today was another test flight. Somewhere out there, Evelyn too would be taking to the sky. Designed by a new generation, flown by hands I'd once guided. I didn't need to be there this time. It was their turn. I walked down the small stone path to the edge of my property where the sand met the canyon drop. The same canyon that had nearly taken me. Now I visited it like an old adversary turned friend. Every year on this date I came to stand at its edge and leave something behind. The first year it was pain. The second, guilt. This year it would be fear. I closed my eyes and let the wind rise around me. "You didn't win," I said softly. "Not gravity, not greed, not hate." When I opened my eyes, the sky was alive, streaks of pink and amber stretching wide, like the world had forgiven itself for being broken. A sound broke the silence, the low hum of turbines. I looked up just in time to see it, Evelyn too, cutting across the dawn, sleek and silver sunlight flashing off its wings. The students had done it. Their flight path passed right above the canyon, poetic, deliberate. It was as if they were reclaiming the air that once tried to take me. I raised my hand to the sky, shielding my eyes as the plane soared higher. "Beautiful," I whispered. "Fly safe, kids." For a moment, the plane tilted wings, dipping left like a salute. Then it disappeared into the light. I stood there long after the sound faded, feeling the warmth of the sun touch my face. Somewhere deep inside, a peace settled, not loud, not triumphant, just complete. I thought of Nathan again, not with anger, not even with pity, but with the kind of compassion you only learn after surviving something meant to break you. He'd written one more letter last year, shorter this time. No excuses, no apologies. Just 3 words, "I'm learning, Dad." Maybe he was. Maybe faith works like that, slow, unseen, but steady. I smiled, took one last sip of coffee and whispered into the wind. "Then keep learning, son. We both still are." The horizon burst fully open now, the desert blazing with life. A hawk soared overhead, circling once before gliding toward the sunrise. I watched it until it vanished free, fearless, exactly as I wanted to be remembered. I turned to go back inside my shadow, long against the sand. The day was just beginning, and so somehow was I. Before I stepped through the door, I looked back one last time and said the words that had carried me through every fall, every betrayal, every climb back toward light. I fell once, but I didn't stay down. The sky gave me back my life, and this time I kept it. If this story moved you, if you believe that faith, justice, and forgiveness can still lift us higher than greed ever could, subscribe to Brian's Stories. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and tell me in the comments, where in the world are you listening from today? Because somewhere out there, someone's learning to rise again, and maybe your story will be the one that helps them do it.